Thank you for joining me. I'm Wendy Carrillo. You can follow me on Twitter at Wendy Carrillo and get a podcast of this show on my blog at power106.com. Miami rapper Rick Ross recently lost his Reebok endorsement deal because of some very controversial lyrics. As a guest on the Rocko song U.O.E.N.O, he rapped about the drug MDMA, known as ecstasy or Molly, in which he said, "Put Molly all in her champagne. She ain't even know it. I took her home and I enjoyed that. She ain't even know it." Yikes. To talk about how all this went down is hip-hop journalist and cultural critic Dream Hampton. Hey, Dream. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Wendy.
So a lot of controversy regarding rapper Rick Ross and his lyrics, and you, along with several people online, started really a social movement, a petition to have Reebok drop him as an endorsed artist because of these lyrics that were really about raping women in one of his songs. Can you tell us about how it even came into your radar and how it all got started?
Well, like so many things, I learned about these lyrics on social media. It's not like I'm sitting around listening to mixtapes by, new MCs trying to find more sexist and misogynist stuff. Right. So I just, they came across, I'm sure it was on Twitter because everything happens on Twitter first and then a week later finds its way over to Facebook.
Right.
But, so Rick Ross, he had these lyrics about Molly. It's funny because a couple of weeks ago I was kind of complaining on Twitter about how Molly has become a co-star in like so many songs and how I just didn't remember, even though drug selling has been a huge topic in hip-hop for forever, I don't remember this kind of blatant celebration of drug use. I mean, obviously, from the very beginning, you had Curtis Blow singing songs about white lines and stuff, but I just didn't remember this kind of, like, open, I'm a drug addict kind of rap.
And so just to clarify, Molly is a drug that is usually used to spike a woman's drink, and it's like ecstasy, or it drugs people out.
Well, I'm not sure that it's usually used to spike a woman's drink. That would be like roofies, but it seems to be like some version of ecstasy, which I know about 10, 20 years ago used to be cut with either heroin or speed, which was bad enough, but now I hear sometimes it's cut with bath salts, and I'm just too old to know what half this stuff is. But anyway, I was on Twitter complaining about that about a week ago, and then these lyrics come up about, Rick Ross using Molly, like you said, to spike a woman's drink. Not that I've always heard lyrics about Molly used that way. And he's, as everyone knows now, he rhymed, put Molly in her drink, she ain't even know. Took her home and had enjoyed that. Whatever the lyric is, she ain't even know. I can't even remember it anymore. It's so off, I tried to get it out of my head. But so I just, I have to say that, as someone who entered hip-hop and began writing about hip-hop and challenging some of the sexism in hip-hop back when Ice Cube was talking about kicking pregnant women down the stairs, in his early 20s, I really hadn't heard a song that was instructional around date rape like that. So it was incredibly offensive. And so I tweeted, it's a low bar to be asking a 40-year-old rapper to cease rape rap. I'm way over policing the misogyny and sexism in hip-hop. Like, I just give up. There are younger women with more energy who can take off, doing whatever Joan Morgan, myself, Kierna Mayo, Sheena Lester started doing 20 years ago. I'm not interested in that. But I find it totally unacceptable that someone with endorsement deals, which became the key factor, could be rapping instructions on how to date rape a woman.
And, we're living in a time where rape has become such a loose term in media. People talk about it. There's members of Congress use the term legitimate rape, as if a woman's body can automatically shut down and avoid getting pregnant by a rape situation, which we know medically is impossible. So it's interesting to see that a rapper of his magnitude would say something like that about women, especially being endorsed by Reebok.
Yeah, it's interesting, not surprising. His apology spoke to his ignorance, quite frankly, or either his denial of knowledge about what rape is. He said that he didn't use the word rape. It's like, yeah, but you described it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it was a real kind of not taking responsibility from it from the outset, which probably, had he done that, which he just released an apology that was quite acceptable on Friday, the day after it was announced that he was dropped from Reebok, he finally came up with a decent apology. His first one, which was just on a radio show that was taped and kind of made its way across the net, was him basically saying that we'd misunderstood him, that he never said the word rape, that all the sexy ladies and the queens on his timeline know that he's not about that rape.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that Rick Ross is a rapist, but that's not what I'm interested in right now. I'm interested and again, I'm not out here trying to police hip hop to be like, I could care, I'm sorry to say this, but I have, again, given up on trying to police the sexism and misogyny in hip hop. I've never been interested in policing it, but I've always been interested in confronting it. But I have actually given up at this point in my life. Like Rick Ross, I'm 40-something years old, so I'm not interested in that anymore. But I know, how closely kids listen to this. I know that Molly, for instance, is a trend on the streets thanks to MCs like 2 Chainz and whomever else is rapping about it.
Right.
So I never thought, I'm not Tipper Gore, so I'm not trying to act like hip-hop is responsible for rape, for misogyny, for violence, for all of those things. But I also know that Jay-Z can say, let's stop drinking Cristal, let's button up, and everyone on the streets will have on an Oxford and be drinking Ace of Spades. So to pretend like it's not wildly influential is a lie also. And part of the reason that Rick Ross had a deal with Reebok is because he is influential. It's not because he's fit. It's not because he makes sense to represent a fitness brand. He had his deal with Reebok because he's influential.
Exactly. And they do perpetuate a lifestyle. So for them to say that, for any artist to say that they're not as influential as their lyrics is obviously a lie. So this petition, you were a part of it, and obviously hundreds of thousands of signatures were collected, obviously sends a message to artists. Is that the final goal that you're trying to say? It's like we demand something better out of hip hop?
Well, this was a very focused action, and it was actually initiated by a group called Ultraviolet. 72,000 signatures were collected, even though hundreds of thousands sounds awesome. But 72,000 were collected and delivered to just a random retail store in Union Square in Manhattan. I wasn't there for that delivery, but I certainly helped to push the petition online. I have more than 45,000 followers on Twitter, so I certainly pushed Ultraviolet's petition to those people and the people who they're connected to, which ends up being like hundreds of thousands in that reach. So, yeah, I mean, this isn't the first time I've tried to push initiatives on Twitter, be it trying to save Troy Davis's life or, recently we were certainly demanding that, like, L.A. Reid, do something about those Lil Wayne and Emmett Till lyrics. So, I mean, again, I'm not interested in policing every little single thing that's offensive in the world or even in hip hop, but some things just become so egregious and so are so beyond the pale and have the power to affect so many young people that something has to be done. Mm-hmm. And that's how I felt in this case. I'm happy to support Ultraviolet. And I thought that their strategy was a smart one. I think it's very much borrowed from the playbook that Oprah and the people that she was in coalition with around the Don Imus when they got him fired. For the comment about the Rutgers women's basketball team. She didn't go to Don Imus and say, let's sit down and have a talk and try to convince this 60-year-old man that his racist comments about black women were insensitive and wrong. She went straight to his sponsors and said, if you do business with Don Imus, then we will boycott you with all of our purchasing power. So I really thought that Ultraviolet was super smart to just forego Rick Ross altogether. If he were 20, like someone like Chief Keef, tweeted this week another like ridiculously offensive rape lyric. He tweeted it out, and but he's 20 with a mother who's 16 years older than him, and I feel like there's some real kind of intervention. I won't be the one to do it, but I feel like there's some real intervention that can happen with him. I don't think that it's worth my time or anyone's time to sit down with a 40-year-old man and try to tell him that drugging women's drinks and having sex with their near lifeless body is rape.
Right, right. Well, it proved something to a lot of listeners, a lot of fans of his music, a lot of followers of Reebok, that definitely women do have a power to do something. And it's not just about women, but it's about the men that support them as well. So thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you, Dream. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me this morning.
Thank you, Wendy, for shedding a little light on this issue.
Joining me just now was hip-hop journalist and cultural critic Dream Hampton. Dream, by the way, contributed to Jay-Z's New York Times best-selling book, Decoded. You can follow her on Twitter at Dream Hampton. Let me give you the backstory on how this went down in social media. On Twitter, Rick Ross said, "I don't condone rape. Apologies for the lyric. Interpreted as rape." In an interview with a New Orleans radio station, he said, "It was a misunderstanding with the lyric and a misinterpretation where the term rape wasn't used, and I would never use the term rape in my records." But sometimes, you don't really need to say the actual word to kind of allude what things are, right? So in a statement, Reebok stated, "Reebok holds our partners to a higher standard, and we expect them to live up to the values of our brand. Unfortunately, Rick Ross has failed to do so. While we do not believe that Rick Ross condones sexual assault, we are very disappointed he has yet to display an understanding of the seriousness of this issue or an appropriate level of remorse. At this time, it is in everyone's best interest for Reebok to end its partnership with Mr. Ross." And so I guess after all was said and done, Rick Ross finally understood that words do go a long way and said in an apology, "Before I am an artist, I am a father, a son, and a brother to some of the most cherished women in the world. So for me to suggest in any way that harm and violation be brought to a woman is one of my biggest mistakes and regrets. As an artist, one of the most liberating things is being able to paint pictures with my words. But with that comes a great responsibility. And most recently, my choice of words was not only offensive, it does not reflect my true heart. And for this, I apologize. To every woman that has felt the sting of abuse, I apologize. I recognize that as an artist, I have a voice, and with that, the power of influence. To the young men who listen to my music, please know that using a substance to rob a woman of her right to make a choice is not only a crime, it's wrong, and I do not encourage it. To my fans, I also apologize if I have disappointed you. I can only hope that this sparks a healthy dialogue and that I can contribute to it." And in case you're thinking, well, it's not a big deal, they're just lyrics, it's just music, let me share with you some stats. A woman's chance of being raped in the U.S. is 1 in 5. The low estimate of the number of women, according to the Department of Justice, raped every year is 300,000. A high estimate of the number of women raped, according to the Center for Disease Control, is 1.3 million. The number of percentages of rapes that are not reported, 54%. Think about that. I'm Wendy Carrillo, and you can follow me on Twitter at Wendy Carrillo, and this is Knowledge is Power right here on KPWR Los Angeles. Thank you for joining me. I'm Wendy Carrillo. You can follow me on Twitter at Wendy Carrillo and get a podcast of this show on my blog at power106.com.